Whenever you face an obstacle, you can either surrender to your excuses or look for the solution. If you constantly look for ways to solve problems or overcome hurdles, you will build neurological pathways in your brain for solution finding. Solution finding is like a muscle in the brain, and it becomes better with practice. Most people have a neurological highway to coming up with excuses, but a dirt road to finding solutions. Daniel Kahneman describes in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, that we have a cognitive bias which he calls what you see is all there is.
What you see is all there is.
What's wrong with that?
What it does, what you see is all there is that we tend not to look for what we don't see. So if we see a story, some elements of a story, we construct the best story we can out of those elements. And we're not really fully aware of what we don't know.
If you see an excuse to give up, then that's all there is to you. What you see is all there is. You see an excuse and that's all there is. And you construct a story in your head. You can't do something because of X. But you might be blind to possible solutions or ignore the path to figuring out the solution. Like Kahneman says, we're not fully aware of what we don't know. You don't immediately see the solution, and so you're not fully aware there may be one. Paul Alexander is a polio survivor who is almost entirely immobile, but that didn't stop him from writing a book. How? He used his mouth to write. Drew Lynch has a severe stutter, but that didn't stop him from becoming a successful comedian and finishing second on America's Got Talent 2015. He had a big obstacle in his speech impediment, but he didn't surrender to that excuse. Instead, he looked for solutions to succeed. One way he does that is to include stuttering as a part of his comedy routine, and as you can see, he's been very successful in that. Nick Newell is another example of this. He was born with a congenital amputation of his left arm, which ends just below his elbow, but that didn't stop him from becoming a professional MMA fighter. He didn't surrender to the excuse of being physically disadvantaged, and instead built his own unique fighting style, and indeed is very successful in his career. These are examples of people who did not give up when faced with obstacles, but instead succeeded despite their disadvantages. Make your weaknesses your strengths. Coming from a hard background makes for a better story anyway. See problem? Think solution. Be relentlessly solution oriented and try to succeed despite your obstacles. Because what's the alternative? Surrendering to your excuses? We all want to blame our failures on extrinsic things. We want help from other people or other things. We want to be in a different environment or have different genetics. We want someone else to hold our hand. This is a bad way to live. We have to look intrinsically first and realize that you have control over your success. We have to take ownership and responsibility for the situation. Take it from Navy SEAL Commander Jocko Willink.
Unlike a team where no one takes ownership of the problems and therefore the problems never get solved, with us, everyone took ownership of their mistakes. Everyone took ownership of the problems. And when a team takes ownership of its problems, the problems get solved. Don't make excuses. Don't blame any other person or any other thing. Take ownership of everything in your world, the good and the bad. Take ownership of your mistakes, take ownership of your shortfalls, take ownership of your problems, and then take ownership of the solutions that will get those problems solved.
Do not rely on others for help before trying to help yourself first. This is a sentiment Veritasium mirrors.
Was that you can't really just ask other people to help get you there. I mean, I'm sure they could if they had infinite amount of time, but people don't have that. And also, the really valuable experience is figuring out how to do it on your own.
Your success is not everyone else's priority, so you have to take responsibility for your own life and issues. The main person who cares about your success is you, and you're also the main person who can control your life and improve it. Believe you can accomplish things and improve yourself. This is called self-efficacy. Self-efficacy refers to one's belief in one's ability to succeed in specific situations or accomplish a task. The optimum level of self-efficacy is slightly above ability. In this situation, people are most encouraged to tackle challenging tasks and gain experience.
Now my point is, when you're contemplating the things that you can and cannot change, err on the side of thinking that you can change much more than you can. Because often you will be able to.
This is tightly connected with the idea of having a growth mindset. It is the belief our traits can be developed through practice and effort. And science shows that if you think you can improve, then you can improve. In one experiment, researchers did an intervention on students who were failing at school. These kids were taught how our brain can form new synapses and grow when people learn new things, essentially telling the kids that they can grow their intelligence, which is a growth mindset. And as expected, while the control group kept falling further and further behind, the growth mindset group bucked the trend and started improving. In another experiment, shy people were recorded having a conversation and were later rated on their social skills, likability, and awkwardness. The shy people with a growth mindset were initially awkward, but after 5 minutes into the conversation, they were in fact rated as likable as the non-shy people. The opposite of growth mindset is a fixed mindset, which in extreme circumstances can lead to a psychological phenomena called learned helplessness. A couple of decades ago, there were some really terrible experiments that established this phenomena. Researchers took some dogs and split them into two groups. In one group, the dogs were forced to endure some punishment, for example, electric shocks, and there was nothing the dogs could do to stop those shocks. In the other group of dogs, there were some levers or fences that they could jump over that would stop those shocks. Later, they tested all the dogs, but this time, all the dogs had a possibility to avoid the shocks by taking some action. What they found was that the dogs who were previously forced to endure the shocks and had no way to stop them just kind of came to accept the shocks, even when there were actions that they could take to stop them. They had learned to be helpless. This is learned helplessness. There was another related human study. In that experiment, adults were trying to complete a task, but there was a distracting noise in the background. Some of the adults had the control to turn off that noise, whereas the other adults could not. What the researchers found was that the adults who could control the noise performed better on the task, even when they didn't exercise that control. They just let the noise play. The mere feeling of control and knowledge that they could turn the noise off at any moment was enough for them to perform better. The belief that you can improve lies on a spectrum. On one side, you have high self-efficacy, growth mindset, solution orientation, persistence, motivation, and the belief that things are completely within your control. On the other side, we have low efficacy, fixed mindset, excuse-oriented, helplessness, whether learned or unlearned, and the belief that things are outside your control. On one side, you look to other people or other things regarding what to do or how to be. On the other side, you rely on yourself. It's a difference between an employer and an employee, a child and a parent, a leader and a follower.